So we are in 2023, and last year we all saw a lot of speculation happening around recession. The world global leaders were divided on the opinion whether it's going to happen. If it is going to happen, when will it happen, and what kind of impact it will have. But as far as US is concerned, last year towards the later part, we saw Jerome Powell actually admit that yes, it is real, and it's going to be an outcome of the inflationary measures that they are actually undertaking. So UK is already experiencing it. Europe is probably going to follow suit. And while all of this is happening, suddenly come back into the picture in China, which is going to negatively impact probably the whole economy, global economy. So with everything which is happening, one question which is in mind of every company is what do we do? How do we combat this and be prepared for any repercussions that may follow? Should we continue doing what we are doing, or should we make some changes in our operating model? Basically, should we just survive, or should we thrive and make some changes so that we can actually flourish post a situation like this?
Yeah, obviously that is the question of our times, Hitesh.
Right.
And any oracular person who could answer this will obviously have hit the nail on the head. So I'm not sure I can answer that question, but I can give you a perspective.
Sure.
I think the very fact that there is so much debate on recession, yes or no, by itself is telling. Right? We've seen last year there was a difference of opinion between Moynihan at Bank of America and Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan. So there are extremely well-read, erudite people who are not in complete agreement. So one conclusion we can derive is, even if the recession is there, it is going to be selective. So now let's look at how the world is playing out post-COVID. So post-COVID, and my point of view to your question is, there is a way that businesses have to now adapt to sort of a sine curve mindset called less is more. Which means that, business models are the answer. It's not even industry. So a selective recession means there is nothing secular about the recession. And when I say it's not secular, it's not even secular, not inter-industry and not intra-industry. So if you play your business model right, you will actually see this as an opportunity like in a Formula One racetrack. It's a corner around which you can accelerate. So let's look at some interesting examples, right? If you look at immediately post-COVID, we saw big tech explode because out of home was less, in home was more. So anybody who had a technology platform to support that shift in behavior exploded. Last year, what have we seen? Big tech starts collapsing. Because suddenly, as COVID retreated, out of home became more and in home became less. But somewhere, those fantastic organizations did not spot that the sine curve was in operation, because the rate of change we are used to is far slower. But now that sine curve is moving continuously. Look at that, the rock star story of Peloton. Again, when in-home was more, Peloton exploded. Last year, Peloton imploded. On the other hand, look at the energy sector, right? Post-COVID, we saw oil go to negative levels, and yet last year, Shell had amongst its best years and some of their best quarters. NG, for instance, which has now focused on renewables, has, if you extrapolate their last year 9-month performance, they would end up growing over 80% year on year. So there are amazing stories. And I think the answer lies in, are you adjusting your business model to a less is more idea? Because certain areas you have to do less of, certain areas you have to play more. And if you get that mix right and you keep, almost like a musician, right? You keep changing the mix depending on how the world, how society, how people's behavior is shifting, you're going to do very well.
That's quite interesting, and seems like this curve has been in play forever, but now it is becoming more evident because the amplitude and the wavelength of that curve is becoming more compressed.
Correct.
So, what do you think is the difference between this recession and the previous financial downturn that we saw? What do you think that is?
So, the previous, so if you look at the global financial crisis of 2008, that was a secular recession. That was a recession where the financial sector sort of poisoned the economy. And it hurt everybody equally. Now, if you look at what's happening now, what is this recession we are sitting in the midst of? At the end of the day, if you look at the world's largest economy, demand is solid. There's no diminution of demand. Unemployment is at its lowest levels. It's just that the supply side is down, leading to inflation, and there are multiple uncertainties. And therefore, as we said, the less is more curve keeps shifting because of. I think the big difference is, therefore, the recession itself is not secular, it is selective. But there are secular discontinuities available. So, Hitesh, you are part of the story. We track $25 trillion of disruption at markets and markets playing out through this decade. That 25 trillion is creating massive thematic discontinuities. Things like sustainability, things like mobility, things like cybersecurity, things like digital health, and many more. These are mega discontinuities. Consequently, if the recession itself is not secular, but you have a set of mega disruptions or discontinuities which are secular, which impact, now, as John Donne said, no man is an island. Now, no business is an island.
Yeah.
So the discontinuity impacts multiple industries. And if you can understand that and tune your less is more strategy to the discontinuity, you are, those who don't are going to suffer. Those who do are going to do exceptionally well. And that is the difference. If I go back to the global financial crisis, it was all about hunkering down, reducing cost, going somewhat into survival mode because it was secular. Everybody was in trouble. That's not the case now.
So I think what you're saying is the secret sauce is not getting into the survival mode, but selectively investing into areas which are less for you today, which can give you more returns tomorrow.
That's correct.
So have you done your less is more thinking? If not, here's a short video from Markets and Markets to get your thinking started.
That there's more volatility on the horizon.
That would be a nightmare for the Federal Reserve and other central banks.
They're likely to put U.S. in some kind of recession 6-9 months from now.
Consumers basically have more money in their accounts by multiples than they did pre-pandemic.
Jeff Bezos is warning Americans to brace for recession.
Ignore the noise. The endless chatter and speculation that hides what's important. The fear sending us scrambling for survival. Downsizing and shrinking in preparation for the economic winter. Just focus. There's you, there's the customer, and there's opportunity. Every company is different. There's a science behind all the ups and downs. Being smart, lean, precise, diversifying instead of downsizing, adapting, disrupting, leading. The right information is what matters. Tapping into less to create infinitely more. To grow, flourish, and consolidate on your terms. Connect with Markets and Markets to find your less is more.